This is Luke 19, verses 1 through 10. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd he could not, because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
I have a confession to make about my sense of humor. I was going to start with a bunch of short jokes about Zacchaeus, because after all, that's what most of us learn about him in Sunday school. Zacchaeus' short stature makes him a surprisingly big target for jokes. But then I remembered a quote from one of my other favorite short people. Peter Dinklage is an actor who also is actually a dwarf. And he played a character named Tyrion Lannister on the TV show Game of Thrones. Now, Tyrion was a dwarf who was constantly the butt of jokes about his height, even though he ended up being one of the wisest and most noble characters on a show populated by a whole lot of really terrible people. And in response to all the ridicule he had endured, Tyrion said this: "Everyone who makes a joke about a dwarf's height thinks he's the only person ever to make a joke about a dwarf's height." But the thing is, there are more important things we need to know about Zacchaeus than his height. The first thing the Bible has to say about him is that he was a tax collector and that he was rich. And that was a problem in ancient Palestine. Tax collectors had a much worse reputation back then, even worse than your average IRS agent does today. They tended to be corrupt, taking a healthy cut of everything they collected for themselves. And if Zacchaeus was rich, that was probably proof that he was just another corrupt tax collector. To make matters worse, tax collectors were considered to be traitors. While everyone else in Palestine hated the Roman occupiers and wanted them gone, Zacchaeus was working to make the Romans rich and was profiting from doing that. To everyone around him, Zacchaeus had a lot of shortcomings, and being short wasn't even in the top 10. But there's something else about Zacchaeus, something that the Bible only hints at. Zacchaeus needed to see Jesus in a way that maybe even he doesn't understand. Zacchaeus needs to see Jesus so bad that when he notices the crowd of tall people between him and Jesus, he decides that he has to do something drastic, something undignified. After spending all of his life being compared to a child because of his height, Zacchaeus realizes that in order to see Jesus, he's going to have to do something childish. This rich, well-dressed man who yearns to be respected, to be taken seriously, goes and climbs a tree. Now, the good news for Zacchaeus is that Jesus notices him. The bad news for him is that Jesus points Zacchaeus out so that everyone notices him. "Zacchaeus," Jesus says, "hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." Jesus sees this man in this silly, childish situation up in a tree and points him out in front of this entire crowd. Jesus even has the audacity to invite himself to dinner at Zacchaeus' house. Who does that? And yet Zacchaeus isn't embarrassed or offended. In fact, he is delighted. But the people who witness this, they are not delighted. They see this holy man, Jesus, this wise teacher, this miracle worker, going to the home of a known sinner. And that is not okay to them. According to Jewish law and to common standards of society, you don't do that. You don't hang out with sinners. You don't visit them in their home, and you definitely don't sit down at their table and eat food with them. Part of this discrepancy between how this crowd of people is acting towards Zacchaeus and how Jesus acts towards him is simply how Zacchaeus is being defined by them. To some of these people, Zacchaeus is a villain in their very own stories. He is the one who has taken money away from them. He is the one who has increased his own wealth and supported an occupying foreign government. To the people in the crowd, Zach is just a sinner. That's all he is. That is all he ever will be. But Jesus sees something different. Jesus sees someone from our reading from Psalm 107. Someone who is in a spiritual wilderness. He's wandered off into a desert where he is far away from the spiritual food and drink that he needs. Now, he may have had some background in the Jewish faith. Jesus says he's a son of Abraham. He must have at some time believed in the God of his ancestors, but he chose a path that led away from that a long time ago. And that ridiculous, foolish act of climbing up a tree to see Jesus, that was Zacchaeus' own way of crying out to the Lord, "Help me! I don't know where I am. I'm not getting what I need. I just want to get back to my home." To Jesus, yes, Zacchaeus is a sinner. But he's not just a sinner. There's only one thing that Jesus needs to know about Zacchaeus, and it's that he is lost. Another part of the reason that all these people and Jesus see Zacchaeus in a very different way gets down to a matter of faith in power. Now, I'll tell you what I mean. It's a matter of what power do we believe in, who or what do we believe is more powerful. Now, a lot of the people in that crowd had taken the law of God and interpreted that as a warning against the power of sin. To them, if Jesus goes into this home and eats this food, then Zacchaeus' sin will somehow rub off on Jesus. To them, sin is some sort of contagious disease that Jesus is going to catch just by being in contact with Zacchaeus. This wise, righteous man, Jesus, is going to end up being corrupted just by being in that house. And Jesus is going to end up becoming just another sinner like him. But what these people fail to consider is the power of Jesus' own righteousness. Yes, Jesus is going to go to Zacchaeus' house and is going to eat food at his table. And then what happens? Verse 8 says, Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Jesus, by this act of mercy, by not rejecting Zacchaeus for his sin or even for his stature, Jesus has shown the power of God's righteousness, and that power is a lot more powerful than what Zacchaeus' sin could ever do. Powerful enough to redeem him, to save him, powerful enough to change his heart and give him a brand new life. All those people are complaining that Jesus has gone to the home of a sinner. But Jesus tells them that's exactly where he's supposed to be. That is where Jesus is called to be. Like a shepherd looking for a lost sheep, or a woman turning her house upside down trying to find a lost coin, Jesus has come to Zacchaeus' house to seek out this one lost man and to gather him in. And by the power of Jesus' love and mercy, Jesus has delivered him and has saved him. And it's important to note that Zacchaeus isn't saying this grudgingly. "Oh, okay, Jesus, guess I'll give the money back. Gosh darn it." Zacchaeus' words are a proclamation of joyful gratitude. I needed something from God. I needed something, I didn't even know what it was, but I knew I needed something. And today I know that God is good. I know that God's steadfast love has endured even for a guy like me. Jesus has shown that to me. I was in a wilderness that I'd gotten myself into, and Jesus has led me back to where I should have been all along. I once was lost, and now I'm found. Now, I've said several times That we don't need to have a special bring a friend to church Sunday. To me, every Sunday is bring a friend to church Sunday. And I would especially recommend that next week for Rally Day. We would love to see everyone here for worship, for this baptism, for our potluck supper, and for our information fair. And yes, for Bible study and Sunday school. We've got a lot going on next week. But inviting a friend to come join us here, that's the easy part. Anybody can do that. But who are the other people we should be bringing here with us? Now, it might be too much of a stretch to invite our enemies, the people who we know have sinned against us, the people we really, really don't like. That is a huge challenge to decide that those are the people we really want sitting next to us in our pew, singing our hymns, eating our bread and drinking from our cup. Because I have to admit, that's a pretty tall order. And we might fall short of that goal. See what I did there? Give yourself time, it'll happen. But this story does challenge us to look at people and to try and see them in a different way. In the way Jesus sees them. Maybe they're not sinners, maybe they're not bad people or villains in our stories. Maybe they're just a little lost. Do we know someone who may have had a background in our faith, but may have wandered a little? Or maybe a lot? You see, part of what this story is about is looking at people we may disagree with, people we may find questionable, and to change the way we define them. Sure, they may have sinned. So have I. So have you. Maybe they aren't bad people. Maybe they just need someone to find them where they are and to help lead them back to where they need to be. And in their own way, maybe they are the ones who are crying out for help. Maybe not in such a strange way as climbing up a tree, but in some way, is there someone around us asking for guidance, challenging us to find them where they are and to gather them in, to deliver them and to save them? And yes, there may be reasons that we are reluctant to do that. Do we think that somehow they will be a bad influence on our church? That their shortcomings will somehow infect us? You see, the problem, that's the wrong kind of faith. That's faith in the power of sin. Our faith needs to be in the power of God to work in this church. The power to influence their lives, to change their hearts. Maybe even to bring them home to where they should have been all along. Friends, if being in this church, if being here with God has the power to keep us coming here week after week to worship and to serve, then maybe being here will have that same life-changing power for other people. This church has to be that place for them. We have to be those people who meet them where they are and invite them to join us where we are. And most importantly, this church has to be where people can meet Jesus. The Jesus who isn't a physician who will only meet perfectly healthy people, but the one who is there for the people who know they need help. This church has to be where people can learn that Jesus isn't a mayor handing the key to the city to their own favorite citizen who never does anything wrong. Instead, this church can be where anyone can meet Jesus, who is the rescue party. The one who went off into the desert to find someone who was lost, and the one who brought them home. And let all God's people say, Amen.
Amen.
Friends, will you please rise and join together